What's up everyone, James here, and in today's video I thought it would be interesting to talk about tannins again. So a while back I did a video on some of the amazing benefits that the tannins produce in the aquarium and the benefits they have to the fishes and shrimps and other life forms within your aquarium. But it was interesting because as much as I got a lot of good feedback from it, there was also a few comments made about the negatives to it, and I thought it'd be interesting to sort of reflect on some of the bad sides to maybe using tannins as well. So yeah, let's take a look. So anyone that knows me by now and has watched my videos in the past, I'm a massive believer of using botanicals in my aquariums. I think that the health benefits to my fishes massively outweigh any of the negatives, and it just creates a really nice natural feel to your aquarium. So, and also it's replicating nature, so why wouldn't you? But there is obviously people out there that don't like this look, and that's absolutely fine. So this video is purely for swinging the viewpoint, I think, and just sort of making it a bit of a fair sort of comparison between the positives and the negatives. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos of mine. I put out weekly videos on all my fish keeping antics, so hopefully there's something for everybody. Right, let's get to it. So I think one of the good starting points here is to talk about probably the most common thing that people don't like about tannins within the aquarium, and that is the dirty look. So, you know, the brownish, orangish off color sort of look to the aquarium can be often sort of a put off, especially if they're in a home or it's the only aquarium that the person has. You know, some people just like that really nice green vibrant sort of feel to their tanks, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, I think it's more of an aesthetic thing for people. They tend to sort of, I think oranges and browns and various colors like that can be associated as a negative color, and your sort of greens and you know other various different colors within the spectrum, I guess, are considered more positive and more neutral colors. So if you're doing a sort of a visual sort of comparison, then obviously greenery probably does benefit people's sort of visual than brown, and also there has been studies to show that greens and various other different colors like that can sort of help with calmness and well-being. So you can see why there is a sort of a sway towards that. You know, these types of aquariums look quite dirty in the sense that they're not green and they're not very clear and pristine. You could argue that another reason for it is that people might not be able to see their fish very well, or it's not showing the vibrant colors of the fish. So I guess that's just another thing. Again, it all comes down to aesthetics, I guess, and what you're after with your tank. But I think that yeah, it's just an interesting topic when you're talking about the dirty look to the aquarium. I think one valid thing to point out with the dirt look is that ultimately the reason you get tannins is that it's just humic substances leached from botanicals, or just particulate or just natural breakdown from leaves and wood and various other different bits and pieces, and that's what sort of creates that sort of cloudy sort of look. It might have the orange tinted color to it depending on if you've boiled your botanicals and got rid of the water from it, but occasionally it still will leach through into the aquarium and make that very clear looking tank of yours turn a little bit of a sort of a tea stained look. I think a really interesting one for me that I noticed was that they can sort of smell. Now this was only one instance, and I dare say that it was more what I was doing than any of the other sort of things that were going on, but in the sense that if you get a lot of different leaves or pods and stuff like that, put them into a smaller environment, and you've got not a lot of agitation to the water, naturally, you know, those organic items are breaking down and it's going to produce a bit of a smell. And so just be aware of that if you are creating aquariums or sort of environments, especially if they're small little jars, or you know, they sort of biospheres and things like that people tend to create. If they've not got the movement to them, those things are going to really stink once those botanicals start to break down. So I think it's just an interesting point to be aware of, you know, if you are going to use botanicals in your aquarium. But generally, as I said, all the aquariums that I've got, I could smell them right now and they don't smell at all off or anything like that. So I think it was more just the fact that there was no water movement to the bowl that I had them in, and yeah, that was what caused the smell. Another interesting topic to talk about in terms of tannins and botanicals is that they can cause pH swings. So this is why a lot of vendors and people within the sort of aquarium world that use botanicals often suggest using a very slow method to add in leaves or seed pods or wood to the aquarium. Just making sure that you do it nice and slow, and then monitor your pH levels and various other water parameters as you would with most things, and just keep a check on that sort of swing, because it obviously adding those natural products, number one, it's adding extra bio load to your aquarium. Just because it's not technically alive like a fish is, it's still organic matter, so it's adding something to your aquarium which is going to obviously impact your filtration and your bacteria nitrogen cycle. So that's something to be aware of. And if you add too much too quickly, it can cause those pH levels to just dramatically like swing from one end to the other. So that's obviously going to be a bit detrimental to the fish that you keep. It's going to stress them out and may even lead to deaths. So it's just very important that when you add those to your aquarium, that you take it nice and slow and just keep an eye on those water parameters as you go along. Another very interesting one here is pests. Now, as with anything in nature, you know, there is small little insects and stuff that can, you know, sort of make their way into your aquariums, and one very high source of that is if you're using botanicals. Now, a lot of the items that you find if you buy them through vendors, for example, are going to be pretty good. They go through a lot of rigorous testing and various bits and pieces to make sure that they meet standards, because some people use botanicals in sort of bowls just for decoration. So they could be a good point to, you know, most of the stuff that you'll buy should be pest free, but you can never take the chance. It's obviously an organic thing, and pests will get onto anything these days. So it's very important that we boil the items that we have and make sure that we get rid of, you know, it's just an extra precaution to get rid of any potential nasties that could be there. There's still a very small chance, but there is with anything that you do. The most important one probably is if you're actually going out sourcing your stuff in the woods or something like that. Now there's going to be a higher chance that these items are going to have like pests on them, so it's important that you either boil them and then leave them for a little while and then reboil them again. You could store them into a container for a little while until you're sure, you know, like maybe a couple of weeks until you're sure that the pests are gone, then boil them. But it's always a very good method to do is to make sure that you're boiling them. I know that a lot of people do put them straight into the tank, and you know, it's the risk that you take, but I think for me personally, I would always make sure that I boil them just to avoid any issues with potential pests. I think the last thing I want to talk about is that some people argue that tannins can affect the growth of plants. Now, this one's quite interesting because obviously people have different experiences depending on their setups and stuff. I've generally not noticed, you know, that much of a problem with plant growth. I have plants in all of my natural style aquariums, and the plants seem to be doing just as well as they probably would in a clear water one. If I wanted to inject CO2, maybe that could make a difference, but I think the most valid point to the reason why there may be a slight inhibitor of plant growth is the fact that the tinted water is obviously stopping the light from coming through as bright as it would. Now that actually could be a positive because you know, tannins have proved to, you know, sort of reduce the amount of algae appearing in aquariums because there's less light getting through, so it can technically be a bit of a benefit. But I suppose you would notice maybe a little bit of slower growth than you would if you had a clear tank, for example. But it all depends on what you're going for and what you like within the aquarium. Like I said, I've not had too much of a problem. I've never seen plants sort of die off and things like that due to, you know, the discolor of the water and stuff. It's generally some other sort of issue that's going on, but I think it's valid to talk about as a point because, you know, it's come up in questions before. So yeah, but for me personally, I don't see really that much of an issue. So that's it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think in the comments. I always think it's really interesting to talk about the topic of botanicals and tannins and things like that, because that's a real passion of mine and I really enjoy that type of aquarium. So it's great to talk about, and it's also great to swing the viewpoint. It's always great to talk about the positives as well as the negatives. So it's very interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I love chatting about this sort of stuff. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notification so you don't miss out. If you want to support the channel, there's a link in the description below to my merch store, my Patreon, and all my social media platforms if you want to follow along. And until next time, you stay safe.